a percent is actually a piece of an entire thing. So say I had something like this, a number line like this, with 0 to 100 students. If a percent is a piece of the 100 students, say I wanted to look at 50% of the students. Well, I know that 50% of the students is only half of the full 100 students that we have. So 50% is the same as 1/2, or 0.5. That's why percents can be changed into fractions or decimals, because a percent is only a piece of the total number of things we have. I can calculate this mathematically by going 50% needs to be changed into a decimal. So I can look at this percent, and I know that percent means per 100, so I can make this 50 per or over 100, and I know this is the hundredths place, so this becomes 0.50 or 0.5. But I haven't yet figured out what the actual number is here. Because 100 students is easy, I know the answer is going to be 50% is going to be 50 of those students. But to figure it out mathematically, I have to actually do the multiplication. So I go 0.5 times 100 students, and that equals 50. So 50%, or 1/2 of 100 students, is equal to 50 students. That's a pretty simple example. Let's take a look at a more difficult one. What if instead of 100 students, I had 37 students? I can still figure out 50% of them, but now I know that half of the number of 37 students isn't going to be 50 anymore. In order to figure this out, I've got to change 50% into a decimal. So again, I go 50% is the same as 50 over 100, which is the same as 0.5. Now that I have this as a decimal, I'm going to multiply this by the total number of students. So 0.5 times 37 will give me the total number of students. So 0.5 times 37, 18.5. So 50% of 37 students is actually 18.5 students. In this example, 18.5 students doesn't make a lot of sense, so we can either round it to 18 students or 19 students. We have to round it to a whole number because we can't have half a student. Let's try another example with another number other than 50%. In this example, we're going to have a total number of 48 students. But instead of figuring out 50% of the 48 students, we're going to figure out 15%. Now I'm estimating 15% might be around there, but I might be a little off. So to figure out 15% of the 48 students, well, I've got to take the 15%, change it into a decimal by first making it into a fraction, and then in order to figure out what 15% of the entire 48 students are, I've got to go 0.15 times the total number of students, 48, and that gives me a total of 7.2. So 15% of 48 is 7.2. Now we're going to look at something other than students. We're going to look at, well, shopping. A shirt from the mall usually costs $42, but it's on sale for 25% off. The first question asks, how much will you save? And the second question asks, what is the total price? So in this case, 42 is the total cost usually. So this is our starting number. And we're going to figure out what 25% of 42 is to figure out how much we'll save. Then, in order to find the total price, we're going to take that amount that we save and subtract it from the starting total of 42. Here we go. I start with $42, and I've got to figure out what 25% of that is. What part of $42 is actually equal to 25%? So in order to do that, I've got to take my 25%, change it into a fraction, and then into a decimal. But I haven't found my answer yet. Now I have to take that decimal and multiply it by the original cost of the shirt, which is $42. My answer is 10.5, which in dollar terms would be $10.50. So, looking back at the question, if the shirt costs $42 and it's on sale for 25% off, how much will I save? I will save $10.50. But that doesn't mean when I go up to the cash register I'm going to pay $10.50. It means that's the amount I'll save. So the second question is, what is the total price? So in order to do that, I've got to take the original cost of $42 and subtract the amount I'll save, $10.50, and that will give me my final total. And my final total will be $31.50. Now that you've learned how to calculate sale price before tax and then the final price you will pay, you can do these three questions. The first one, 22% of $78, 45% of $40, and 10% of $32.70.